Om Gyanam Timirandhasya Gyananjana Chakshurun Militam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Tadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavangsha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vitangsha He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya eva cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna to everyone. I just wanted to mention that I really appreciate it when the devotees turn on their videos. Thank you for doing that. It's easier to concentrate when you're looking at the video and you're on video, and it's also nicer for the speaker to concentrate. So it's more attentive listening. And I also understand those who cannot turn it on. That's also understandable. But if you can, please do turn it on. So this is Hare Krishna. Yeah. So this is chapter 3 today. Last time we covered up to chapter 2, and now we are starting chapter 3 of the Nectar of Devotion, Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. You may remember that last time we ended with the eligibility for devotional service, the eligibility to start this process of bhakti yoga. And in this section, Rupa Goswami begins with this eligibility, particularly in relation to Vaidhi sadhana bhakti. The prerequisite for beginning devotional service is attraction, which is obtained by how? By the mercy of a devotee. Advancement in Vaidhi sadhana bhakti depends on one's level of faith and knowledge of the scriptures. When one is free from the bodily concept of life while having the exclusive desire to serve Krishna, he is qualified to practice pure devotional service. So, Vairagya Vidya Nija Bhakti Yoga. Bhakti Yoga, the only prerequisite is attraction to Krishna, which comes from the mercy of the pure devotee of the Lord. Like we see in the life of Narada Muni, he began his devotional service simply because of the mercy of these great devotees of the Lord. However, that advancement is more easily made. That advancement is quickened by also detachment, by knowledge of scriptures, by detachment, by faith. Particularly in this chapter, Rupa Goswami will focus on faith, that how to the level of one's faith in Krishna's service, in Krishna consciousness, to that level, one's advancement is, you could say, encouraged. To the degree of one's faith, we are advanced in spiritual life. So faith is very important. Here, faith is emphasized, knowledge of scriptures, and freedom from the bodily conception of life, detachment, along with that attraction to serving Krishna. And that attraction eventually turns into the exclusive desire to serve Krishna. So in this chapter, while in the previous chapter, Rupa Goswami gave us the general knowledge that we should have attraction for Krishna and devotional service to start devotional service. In this section, he actually expands it further and talks about the grades of eligibility according to the 3 levels of devotees. And particularly this process of bhakti rejects the processes of bhukti and mukti, which we will define. Bhukti meaning sense enjoyment, mukti being the desire for liberation. Just 1 second, I have to fix. Yes. So, Prabhupada here writes, on account of his association with Mahatmas or great souls, 100% in the devotional service of the Lord, or great souls 100% in the devotional service of the Lord, one may attain a little bit of attraction for Krishna, but at the same time, one may remain very much attached to fruitive activities and material sense enjoyment, and not be prepared to undergo the different types of renunciation. Such a person, if he has unflinching attraction to Krishna, becomes an eligible candidate for discharging devotional service. So here in this quote, one may think that Prabhupada is saying that, if someone is attracted to the service of Krishna, if one has the association of the Mahatmas, but is attached to fruitive activities and sense enjoyment, such a person, their advancement is very slow, or their advancement is not possible. But Prabhupada is actually making the opposite point, that even if one has desires for bhukti and mukti, even if one has desires for material sense enjoyment, but if one has that attraction and that association, one still becomes an eligible candidate for discharging devotional service on account of his association with the Mahatmas. That attraction is developed and we become eligible for devotional service. So this is a very important point. This is a very special point here. And it's interesting, I was just reading somewhere, I cannot recall exactly where, but Prabhupada was saying that the simplest way, the most effective way of making spiritual advancement. I was reading, this was Vedanta Deshika, who was the one of the acharyas in the Sri Vaishnava tradition. He was a disciple of Ramanujacharya. And he was saying that in the Sri Sampradaya, which is also Vaishnava Sampradaya, the philosophy, the process of prapatti is most important. They focus on prapatti. So prapatti means surrender to the Lord. And he was saying that this surrender to the Lord becomes manifest by association and service to the Mahatmas. By serving the Mahatmas, one can very easily, his point was, very, very easily practice this process of surrender. If nothing else is there, one can still make immense advancement, because we see in the life of Narad Muni that everything begins by that association with the Mahatmas. That association, that service purifies the heart, and then devotional service becomes manifest in the devotee's heart, and that person becomes eligible for discharging devotional service. So then the hearing, the chanting, all of these things further expand. So what is the eligibility now for Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti? The eligibility for taking up Vaidhi Sadhana, which is now the systematic, regulated service to the Lord, is attraction to Krishna's service. There's no other requirement. Even if one is deficient in knowledge or renunciation, if he has any attraction to serving Krishna, he is qualified to begin. One gets this attraction by association with devotees. So Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti is, the regulated sadhana that we all do. And when simply, so beautifully it's said here, there's no other requirement. Just has to, even if you're deficient in knowledge or renunciation, if we have attraction to serving Krishna, that carries us forward. Prabhupada in one place says that the process of Bhakti Yoga is so nice that it forcibly drags one back to Krishna. One simply has to begin that process. One simply has to be attracted to serving Krishna. And this attraction begins with the association of devotees. Some devotees' life or qualities or their activities attract us, and then we begin that practice. In Vaidhi Sadhana, one's attraction to Krishna's service arises from the inspiration of Shastra and Guru. Remember? So this was the distinction between Vaidhi Sadhana and Raganuga Sadhana, or Raganuga Bhakti. The inspiration for Vaidhi Sadhana is from Shastra and Guru. Whereas in Raganuga, the inspiration is the natural attraction for Krishna. So both are doing sadhana, but the inspiration is coming from different places. Therefore, the stronger one's faith in the knowledge of the scriptures, the stronger is one's attraction. And thus, the more eligible he is to advance. So if the inspiration is coming from Shastra and Guru, then the stronger one's attraction is, or faith is, in Shastra and Guru, the more eligible, the more qualified one is to advance in Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti. And we see this many devotees, that because they have they read scriptures a lot, or because they have unflinching faith in their words of their guru, or they're following their instructions, they make a lot of spiritual advancement very quickly, because on account of that attraction. In fact, the three grades of devotees are measured or judged based upon their faith in the scriptures, the words of the Shastras. Or one can say here, revealed knowledge. So faith in the scripture, or the faith in the words of the spiritual master, which is tantamount to scripture. Yasya deve parabhakti yatha deve tatha guru tasyete kathita vyakyam prakashante mahatmana. That one who has unflinching faith in the words of the spiritual master and Krishna, to such a person, all the confidential imports of spiritual knowledge become revealed. So what is this faith? You have the Kanishta Adhikari, the low grade faith. This faith This faith can be easily swayed. So, we read something and it doesn't make sense to us. Prabhupada says man didn't go to the moon, or or there are certain, you could say, other, you could say, dimensions of this universe, such that those dimensions are flat. So we read, in the scriptures it says that this Bhumandala is flat. Although the earth is described as Bhugola, but round, but the Bhumandala is described as flat. And we don't understand that this Bhumandala is more than the earth planet. Something confuses us. So we lose our faith. That is Kanishta Adhikari. So their faith in scripture is very weak, and their knowledge of scripture is also very less. If someone challenges them, they cannot offer arguments to the opposing opinion. Such Kanishta Adhikaris often become just very angry with the opposing opinion, but they cannot properly respond to them with very strong scriptural arguments. The Madhyama Adhikari, or medium grade devotee, is strong and convinced in scripture. One becomes a Madhyama Adhikari when there's no question in one's own mind about the validity of scripture, and that faith has been established through regular reading and also through experience, where over the course of our life we see that, in fact, what the Shastra says eventually comes true. In fact, what the Shastra says is very true. In fact, what Srila Prabhupada always says is so right. Every devotee in their own life can relate with this, that how over time your faith, initially you have faith in everything, but then the faith deepens over time with experience. So we start out in our Krishna consciousness very, very enthusiastic, and then things happen, we lose our faith. And then as we advance more, then it's sort of the regaining of faith. And at that time, that faith is very steady and very deep. Because this time round, we're building that faith based upon our own personal realization. It's not a blind faith. It's a very, it's still faith. There's still, faith means there's a level of, you could say, we believe more than the evidence that you have. That's the difference between faith and simply knowledge. Faith means that you make a leap of knowledge in some ways. You believe in more than the actual evidences that you have. But that faith is not simply a blind faith. It's a faith that's very much grounded in the scriptures, in the Shastras, and in realization of how that manifests in our life. So this is the stage of Nishtha. One can not be moved, but in terms of knowledge of scripture, such a person, their knowledge is good, but they cannot always defeat the opposing opinion because their knowledge of scripture is limited. Their faith is perfect, not completely perfect, but is very strong, but their knowledge is still lacking. So these are different ways or classifications, but these are not the absolute definitions, actually. We see in Chaitanya Charitamrita, there are other definitions for Uttamadhikari. So we may think, okay, well, that means if someone is very learned, then they're very advanced. Not necessarily, because if a person is very learned, they may become confused by their learning. And still, they may not be able to defeat the opposing opinion. But we see, like in the case of Srila Prabhupada, where he was so expert because of his realized knowledge, because of his faith in Krishna. He was so expert that whenever someone had a doubt or a question, he immediately responded with cutting words. There's no opposition. There's no opponent who could defeat him. he was like, if you have a chess game, he was one step ahead of that person. That person says, I'll put this forward. But Prabhupada already knew it, and he could defeat any argument that anyone made. Like there's this one very nice story. It's one of my favorite. One devotee, he was a very nice devotee, and he was Prabhupada's disciple. And so Srila Prabhupada wanted to make him the temple president. And this devotee had a family and small children and all these things. So he was a very nice devotee. He wasn't after any, didn't want any position. So he somehow came to know that Prabhupada wanted to make him the president of the temple. So this devotee, he prepared all of his arguments that why he doesn't want to be the temple president. He was absolutely fixed, so much responsibility. He just didn't want to take that huge headache. And he absolutely was certain he didn't want to. So then the news came that Prabhupada wanted to meet him. And this devotee knew that, oh, this is why Prabhupada's meeting me. He's going to ask me to be president. So again, he had prepared everything, all of his arguments that this is why I cannot do it. I will absolutely not do it. Prabhupada's going to ask me, but I'm going to say no. Prabhupada, I'm sorry, I can't do it. So all these arguments he had prepared in his mind, because he somehow came to know, he wasn't supposed to know, but he came to know that Prabhupada is going to ask him to be president. So then the meeting happens and he meets Srila Prabhupada, and Prabhupada looks at his disciple very affectionately and he says, so I have one instruction for you. I'm, you're a very nice devotee, very happy with you. So he says, I would like you to take sannyas. And this devotee is shocked. He has a wife, he has kids, young kids, just married recently. Prabhupada said, I would like you to take sannyas. And he says, Srila Prabhupada, now he wasn't ready for this. He had received, classified information that Prabhupada is going to ask him to become president. He'd come prepared for this, but this he was not prepared for. So he said, Prabhupada, how can you say this? This is impossible. I just got married. He says, no, I would like you to take sannyas. Ultimately, we have to surrender everything to Krishna. You take sannyas. This devotee was like, no, Srila Prabhupada, I cannot take sannyas. I'll do anything, Srila Prabhupada, for you, but I will not take sannyas. Srila Prabhupada said, no, you should take sannyas. This is my instruction. He says, no, Prabhupada, I'll do anything for you, but I will not take sannyas. I'm just too attached. I cannot do this, Prabhupada. I'll do anything that you want me to do. So Prabhupada said, okay, then become temple president. So Prabhupada immediately defeated him. All of his thoughts, arguments. He knew how to make his disciple come on the right path. And so this is the quality of the Uttamadhikari. One can never win a debate with an Uttamadhikari. And you must have experienced this in your life also when meeting great devotees of the Lord. Some of us didn't meet Prabhupada, most of us didn't on this call, but we met other great devotees who are his disciples. And you'll see that you can never defeat them in a discussion. Why? Because that knowledge is not simply the intellectual knowledge of the scripture. It is the realized knowledge of the scripture. It is a very deep knowledge coming from Krishna. And therefore, they know the other person's heart, and they can immediately respond to their misgivings, to the misgivings within the heart, on a level that's 10 times deeper than what we are thinking. So that is the quality of the Uttamadhikari devotee, that they're perfect. They're strong in their faith, so strong that their faith can convince others. And they're so strong in their knowledge that they can defeat any opposing opinion. No one can. No one goes unanswered or unfulfilled. They know the answers to all the questions. So we should aspire to become an Uttamadhikari devotee of the Lord. And this happens through developing our faith in Krishna, which is realized knowledge, by service to Krishna, by service to the Mahatmas, by chanting Krishna's holy names, and by also what we're doing now, which is so important, increasing our knowledge of the scriptures so that we can gradually, very gradually, come to the point of answering people's questions, not just by answering, but by giving something that is very satisfying and really answering it based on Shastra. So for Kanishta Adhikari, there are 4 types. And in the Bhagavad Gita, this is mentioned, Chaturvidha bhajante mam, jananam punyakarmanam, artharati jigyaso jnani cha bharatarshava. So these 4 types are the artha, those needing relief from distress. They are the artharthi, those who want opulence. Those who have become inquisitive, or the jigyasu. And finally, the jnani, those who are wise. So you say, how is the jnani a neophyte? Yes, no, they all start off as neophyte devotees, but particularly the artha, artharthi, and the jigyasu. Those who come to God for some wealth, freedom from distress, freedom from some illness, those who want money, and those who are just inquisitive for intellectual satisfaction. So many people are studying religion. I just went to a conference in religion, and there's 10,000 people there, 10,000 people interested in religion, but not one of them is even vegetarian. They're eating meat, talking about religion. So one can be inquisitive about God, but not really practicing it. And then finally, those who are wise, the best among the 4, the jnanis. We see here how these devotees, they began their spiritual journey out of these 4 things, but they became such elevated devotees. Right here we see, this is the image of Gajendra. Gajendra was distressed and he was calling out to the Lord for help. But due to his calling out to the Lord for help, although he was a neophyte in that sense, because he was asking for Krishna when he was in distress, not otherwise, he becomes completely purified. The Kumaras, they are inquisitive for knowledge. They are also great jnanis. Yet by smelling the tulsi from the lotus feet of the Lord, they became pure devotees of the Lord. Here we see Dhruva Maharaj. Such a beautiful painting, Dhruva Maharaj. He comes to Krishna not out of distress, not out of inquisitiveness, but out of what? Artharthi. He was an artharthi, wanting opulence. He wanted money. I think many devotees can relate with Dhruva Maharaj. We become devotees, but we still want money. We still, think that we can become a big business person. Even Srila Prabhupada. Of course, that was Leela in his case, it's pastime. But Prabhupada seriously thought, after being meeting a spiritual master, he was a young man at that time when he met Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. He didn't meet his guru in old age. He met him when he was a young man, just a young adult. But then he thought that, let me earn a lot of money, let me have a big business. And then with all that wealth, then I will preach Krishna consciousness. And Prabhupada came this close to becoming a huge businessman in India. He almost got this deal, which Prabhupada says, if I had accepted it, he then chose a different one. There are 2 paths in front of him. He said, I would have become one of the greatest business persons in India. This is Prabhupada's exact line. But Krishna didn't want that. Because then people would have said, oh, it was because of his money that he was able to bring so many people to Krishna consciousness. No, Prabhupada became penniless. He lost everything, and even his family threw him out of the house. And then he became the most successful person in the world, showing that it was simply on the basis of his bhakti, on his great devotion to the Lord, which brought him success. But the key thing here is that that even Srila Prabhupada thought that, let me get some wealth, let me get some money. This way I can preach Krishna consciousness. So this is something that we all also have some desire. We think, oh, I still want some money, Krishna. Dhruva Maharaj wanted that money. But when he sees the Lord, he becomes fully purified. And this is that point of bhukti and mukti, that we're saying that bhukti and mukti are drawbacks, but still, even if one has those desires, one is still eligible for devotional service. This is why devotional service is so special. This is why it's the most wonderful process. Because in the processes of jnana, in the processes of impersonalism, you must be a sannyasi. That is Prabhupada says this actually in one lecture. He says, that is the requirement. The eligibility for those processes are that one must be a sannyasi. They will not even talk to you until you are fully renounced, until you become a full-time monk. But it's only in the process of bhakti, in devotional service, that in any ashrama, in any varna, one can serve the Lord. One can become very advanced in spiritual life. So this is the example of Dhruva Maharaj, how he, although neophyte devotee, becomes a pure devotee of the Lord. And finally, here we find all the sages of Naimisharanya and Shaunaka Rishi speaking to them. They were all inquisitive. They were yogis engaged in, yagyas, somewhat fruitive activities. They did not have knowledge of bhakti yoga, but because they were inquisitive about spiritual knowledge, and also, jnanis, they had knowledge. They attained perfection by hearing Srimad Bhagavatam, 80,000 sages from the lips of Shaunaka Rishi. So we must start the process of devotional service, and that purifies our heart. At the same time, the disqualification for pure devotional service, not devotional service here, is bhukti and mukti. So one can engage in devotional service even if one has desires for bhukti and mukti, but as long as one has attraction for Krishna. But that devotional service will not be pure devotional service until we give up the desire for bhukti and mukti. Selfish desires prohibits attraction to selfless bhakti, and thus disqualifies one from pure devotional service. So devotional service is easy, and it eventually takes us to pure devotional service. But all of us, we want to do pure devotional service, right? Because we want to become dearest to Krishna. And so as long as there's that selfish motive, we have some motivation to be that special one, to be recognized for our services, to be honored for our services, to receive wealth in exchange for our service, that devotional service does not become pure devotional service. Bhukti is the desire to enjoy the senses and the mind. So Prabhupada, I was just listening to a lecture, he was saying, Srila Prabhupada is so amazing, and his lectures are so amazing. And every time we hear them, we'll hear new things that we won't have heard before. So in this lecture, first time I ever heard, Prabhupada was saying that if we have the desire to become a great scholar, then we cannot become a devotee of the Lord. Our devotional service will not be complete. So even in devotional service, if we even if we desire to become a scholar of the scriptures, which we just said is the quality of the Uttamadhikari, but if the desire is not for the service of Krishna, but is the desire to become a great scholar, that desire will stop one from advancement. So bhukti is the desire to enjoy the senses and the mind. People are sometimes in the mental level for many, many years, and they're so educated, so intelligent, yet their devotion to Krishna is not mature. It is not fructified. It is not fully developed because the desire of bhukti is there. And then we may be worshiping Krishna because we want that shubhada, that all auspicious life. And we want to be happy and we want to be peaceful. We don't want disease. And we see these great devotees, they walk around and their face is radiant. So we worship Krishna for the desire to be liberated from suffering. That's mukti, right? Liberation means freedom from suffering. But even that is a material desire. And as long as we have that desire, we cannot love Krishna with all of our heart and soul. We won't have that selfless desire. What is a devotee's desire? Like Queen Kunti says, let those sufferings come again and again. The pure devotee is not afraid of suffering, but the devotee is simply afraid of forgetting Krishna. And that is pure devotional service. So, one becomes eligible for pure devotional service when one has attraction for devotional service, when one has the association of devotees, and also when one is free from the desires of bhukti and mukti. So Rupa Goswami describes this bhukti and mukti as ghosts and witches. It's very interesting how so much time is spent on bhukti and mukti by Rupa Goswami, because these are things that actually stop us in our devotional life. Like, you must think that Nectar devotion is the handbook of the Krishna consciousness movement, right? It's kind of like the guide, the user's guide for devotional service. So Rupa Goswami is hitting on those points that stop people or that inhibit them from the proper practice of devotional service. Just like an exercise manual, right? If one exercises in the wrong way, one can hurt one's knees or one's muscles, one can damage the body. In the same way, Rupa Goswami here is giving us the things that we have to be careful about. And so here he expands further that this bhukti and mukti are like ghosts and witches. A haunted person cannot act on his own free will. A person who's inhabited by a ghost, they cannot act on their own free will. Being possessed by ghosts or witches, he is forced to fulfill their desires. If desires for bhukti and mukti haunt the heart, they will, like ghosts and witches, force one to continually pursue sense gratification and liberation. One will not be able to act in one's own self-interest, which lies in loving and serving the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So this is a very interesting analogy, because when a person is haunted by a ghost or witch, then Rupa Goswami is saying they can't act according to their own desires. They must work like puppets. And so he's comparing that to the desire of bhukti and mukti, that someone who is acting with the desire for material wealth and liberation, such a person is like they cannot act otherwise. They become forced to act in that way. And in fact, only the devotees of the Lord who are free from those desires can actually act freely, that is, for their own self-interest. And let's think about it. This is so true. Because when one is addicted, let's say, one is intoxicated and addicted to intoxication, one becomes a slave of that intoxication, right? They don't want to take that drug. All drug addicts, if you interview them, they know that that drug is bad for them, but they have to take it. It's like so odd. They don't want to take it, but they have to take it, even though they don't want it. And no one's telling them to take it, but they have to take it. In the same way, We know that this chase for wealth and money and power is killing us, especially as you get older. You see that your life is going by, you're pursuing this, and you're not enjoying life. I mean, it's just not happiness. Working day and night at our jobs, seeing the wrinkles come under our eyes, day after day, serving our boss. It's just not pleasure, but we're forced to do it because we cannot extricate ourselves from it. We can't take that step to give it up. And this is the ghost and witch of bhukti and mukti. The pursuit for freedom from suffering, for enjoyment, and wealth is what enslaves us. So we would actually, the devotee of the Lord is not even chasing a happy life. What to speak of not chasing wealth, but is not even doing that. Because in that chase, one actually becomes unhappy. Like Prahlad Maharaj says, the solution to material problems is more troublesome than the problem itself. The chase to fixing the problems is actually more troublesome than the problem itself. And in that way, Nietzsche and these nihilists, they were right. All of material life is simply absurd. There's no real happiness or pleasure. Any form of it is all the same. It's all misery. It's all unhappiness. So, like Prabhupada says, Krishna says in the Bhagavatam, there's no really good and bad in the material world. The real thing is just focusing our mind and heart in Krishna, because material world is all bad. It's all, it's all the same. So this is a bhukti and mukti right here. The two things that overcome, that control, haunt our consciousness. These desires are compared to being haunted by ghosts and witches, because while these aspirations for material enjoyment or spiritual oneness with the Supreme remain, no one can relish the actual transcendental taste of devotional service. So, while these desires and spiritual aspirations remain, we actually cannot relish the transcendental service. We miss it. Again, we see this in devotees' lives. Like, in our Naperville community, His Holiness Romapad Swami comes here, and sometimes when we are very much absorbed in this bhukti and mukti, in this material advancement, we don't go and take advantage of his association. But we miss out on that nectarian nectar that is emanating in that association of devotees, in that conversation, in that, reciprocation, because of that drive for material enjoyment. We can do one thing or the other, right? So we're busy at home, doing this and that, or at work, doing very important things. And as a result, we miss that ecstasy. So we are not able to relish it with all of our heart and mind, because we have these other these vasanas, these anarthas that are nailing us down. Every material attachment that we develop is like a nail on the soul, which is nailing us down to this material world. So we go back and we go and buy a beautiful car. That's one more nail, one more attachment that's nailing us. Like, think of the Jesus cross, Jesus, he was nailed to the cross. So think about the cross like this material world. So every desire that we have, it's one more nail that gets driven into our body, due to which we are tied down to this material world. And every aspiration that we give up is the release of that nail. It's that freedom to relish the actual service. In the same way, another perspective we can see it from is that the misgivings in the heart, that is maybe inimical feelings towards a devotee or devotees, those stop us from relishing the taste and happiness of devotional service. Because then when we go into that community of devotees or into the temple, then we cannot chant and dance freely without any inhibition. Like Lord Chaitanya said, this is the quality of a devotee, that to chant and dance without any inhibition, because we develop inhibitions. I don't like this person is watching me, what will they think of me? And they will laugh at me, but I'm supposed to be laughing at them actually, because look, they're so bad. So these things, when we develop these inhibitions, these inimical feelings, then again we cannot relish the transcendental taste of devotional service. Why? Because these inhibitions are developed from aspirations for material enjoyment. This devotee has come in the as an obstacle to our material enjoyment. Therefore, we dislike that devotee, right? We wanted to do something, that devotee stopped us from doing it, or took our service, or that devotee didn't make us feel good. So they came in the middle of my sense enjoyment. They were not pleasing to my senses because my senses wanted something. So most offenses also are, or you could say inimical feelings, are due to material enjoyment, the desire for material enjoyment. And that's why when you hear Prabhupada's classes, very often the thing that he emphasizes the most is often, giving up material desires. And you think, why does he do that? Why doesn't he talk about, freedom from offenses so often? Because until we are filled with material desires, then we really cannot give up our inhibitions, our misgivings towards other devotees. Because if we have big material desires, they'll come in the way. We were just talking, some devotees were saying, if someone has the desire to become a great personality in the movement, a great leader or something, then he'll see the other devotees who are also in leadership roles as obstacles on his path, and therefore will have misgivings towards them. So all these things, they stop the relishing of the actual transcendental taste of devotional service. And if somehow or the other we can give them up, we can give up these ghosts and witches which have haunted us for so many lifetimes, and just remember that I don't need anything, I don't want anything. I only want loving service to Krishna. Then we can join the party of Lord Chaitanya's movement, of Lord Chaitanya's intimate associates, and actually taste the transcendental taste of devotional service. And this is the quality of great devotees in our movement, that we see their life is everything for Krishna. No personal motivation, no personal aspiration. They're engaged in such great things. They're acquiring huge properties. They're building huge temples. They're collecting millions of dollars, but it's all for Krishna. Nothing for myself. No bit of nothing for myself. And they then become very intimate associates of Srila Prabhupada. A pure devotee never cares for liberation. So now we talked about material enjoyment, now liberation. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu prayed to Krishna, "My dear son of Nanda, I do not want any material happiness in the shape of many followers, nor immense opulence and wealth, nor any beautiful wife, nor do I want cessation from material existence. I may take birth many times, one after the other, but what I pray from you is that my devotion unto you may always remain unflinching. I don't want this, I don't want that, I don't want this or that. May I just have unflinching devotion unto you. And who knows the Sanskrit for this verse that Prabhupada is referring to? This is not the exact translation, but which verse of the Shikshashtaka is he referring to?
Na dhanam na janam, Prabhuji.
Yes, very nice. Na dhanam janam na sundarim kavitam va jagadishay. Mama janmani janmanishware bhavatad bhaktir haittakitvahi. That I do not want dhanam, janam. People want wealth. People want high birth, which means a good position. Nasundarim. People want a beautiful woman or a handsome man. But what do I want? Mama janmani janmanishware bhavatad bhaktir haittakitvahi. That life after life after life, in any life, I may just serve you as your unflinching servitor. May I, life after life, remember that I am your servant and I have nothing else to my name. I'm simply your servant. So Rupa Goswami makes all these points not just whimsically, but he always quotes. You will see this is and the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu is like 70% all quotations. He quotes all the scriptures to give credibility to his statements. Srila Rupa Goswami always quotes extensively from Shastra to substantiate all of his points, analysis, and conclusions. And by doing this, he is setting an example for us. He's setting an example for all the preachers of the Krishna conscious movement, that if we want to preach, then we should know our books. We should not be lazy. Our intention of preaching is very nice, but intention is not enough. We also have to work, right? We should not just be lazy. And this is why Prabhupada started these courses of Bhakti Shastri, so that we can learn this knowledge very scientifically. We can learn the verses so that we have them when they're needed. And this is an image of Srila Rupa Goswami surrendering his life to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in complete submission. Rupa Goswami, therefore, to now demonstrate these points, he gives examples of great devotees who are uninterested in bhakti and mukti. So first, Rupa Goswami gave us the principle that for pure devotional service, one has to give up these desires of bhakti and mukti. Then he goes into detail, what are they and how do they affect us, by describing them as ghosts and witches. So see how rigorous he's being here. So he tells us exactly why we should not want it, because it's like a ghost or witch that haunts us, that takes away our freedom. And now, as though even that was not enough, he gives examples of devotees so that we may follow their example. He gives examples of devotees who gave up these material desires. One example is of Bilva Mangala Thakur, how he gave up the desire for bhakti and mukti. He was very much attracted to this woman, and he was so attracted to her that he was willing to give up his life for her. But by the mercy of Lord Krishna, he came to realize that how fallen this attraction was. Actually, this woman, she herself preached to him and said that the same attraction that you have for me, if you had even one iota of that attraction for Krishna, how glorious would that be? How much happiness that would actually bring you. And Bilva Mangala Thakur says, indeed, this is true what she's saying. All this material enjoyment didn't bring me any happiness. And Krishna is so beautiful. Again, this is due to his past life. Ordinarily we will not get that realization. But he gets this realization. And his realization is so strong that he says, it's due to these material eyes that I became attracted to these lusty women. So that I will only be attracted to Krishna, who is not seen from material eyes anyway. Krishna is seen through the heart, not through the material eyes. Let me get rid of these eyes. So he takes these two sticks and he puts them in his eyes, pokes his eyes, and finishes his eyes forever and ever. So that is Bilva Mangala Thakur. Then another example is in Srimad Bhagavatam 3:25, 34, and 36. Kapila Dev is advising Devahuti to give up all material desires, all material attachments. Kapila Dev is a son of Devahuti, and being a very chaste wife, she was very attached to her husband, Garda Muni, and a very great mother. Kapila Dev is her son, who is Krishna himself. She's attached to her son. So she asks him, how can I become free of these attachments? And Kapila Dev, through his instructions, teaches her how to become free from material attachments and be only attached to Krishna. Another example is in Bhagavatam 3:4-15, where Uddhava is addressing Krishna. And in this section, Uddhava is glorifying the devotees who are detached from material things. And finally, we have 4:9-10, where Dhruva Maharaj is addressing the Lord, where he tells the Lord that I was chasing after broken pieces of glass. But oh my Lord, after seeing you, I have received gems. And I realized that what I was chasing after was simply broken pieces of glass. Okay, so this is the end of this chapter. Thank you very much for your very kind attention. If there's any questions, comments, we can take them at this time. We have about 15 minutes. Kamala Mataji, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Dandrit Pranam Prabhuji. Thank you so much for this wonderful session. While I was reading chapter 2, I was thinking that many a times people say that by just chanting the holy names of the Lord once, one can get liberated. So it's a great start for a neophyte devotee like me. But after reading about this bhukti and mukti, because still somewhere in our hearts we have this desire that after seeing this miserable material world, we don't want to come back here. And now I realize that that also is a selfish motive. So thank you so much for enlightening that. But Prabhuji, how can we get selfless love for Krishna? How can we let go this strong desire not to come back to this material world of misery again?
So actually you bring up a very nice point, because the desire to go back home, back to Godhead, is not necessarily a material desire. In fact, Srila Prabhupada told his disciples that at our stage in devotional life, we should pray to Krishna to go back home, back to Godhead. We should have that desire, because the desire to go back home, back to Godhead is a desire for service to Krishna. It's not necessarily a material desire. If we are going back to Godhead, then we can actually serve Krishna. Whereas in the material world, with our limited material bodies and all of our material desires, it's very hard for us to serve. So if we are thinking, I want to go back home, back to Godhead because I want to eat those juicy mangoes and swim in the pure waters of the Yamuna, and it really doesn't matter if Krishna is there or not, then that is a material desire. It's kind of like sometimes the way some Christians portray heaven, right? Heaven is like the suburban community, very similar to a earthly suburban community where you have, a nice house, brand new house with a 3-car garage, and the whole family is there. The man is there looking really nice. The woman is there like a queen next to him. They're out in their front yard, and their dog is there. And everyone is there. And the only person who's actually missing is who? Jesus. There's no Jesus there. There's no God there. But it's heaven without God. So that is the material desire. That let me become liberated, fully happy without any service. And therefore, most often, Srila Prabhupada translates mukti as impersonal liberation, not as liberation to Golok Dham. Because we won't get there unless we have unflinching devotional service to Krishna. But impersonal liberation is exactly this idea of the Christian heaven. It's liberation without God. I become God. I am Ishwar. I'm Brahman. So no need to serve God. That is the material liberation. But the spiritual liberation of loving service to Krishna, that is only based upon service. We can only reach that stage if we have unflinching, unmotivated, pure devotional service to Krishna. And that's why we can desire that. Now, on Srila Prabhupada's level, or even just more advanced devotee level, they just desire, let me, like Lord Chaitanya is saying, come back here, or wherever you want, Krishna, here or liberation, birth after birth, let me serve you. But at this point, if we say we want to come back, we might think, well, yeah, I want to come back so that I can be back with my, my puppy here. So that desire may manifest if we want to come back here. So that's why for our situation, we should desire, yes, let me leave everything. Let me go to the spiritual world where I can be with Krishna and his unalloyed devotees and take as many people as I can along with me, take my family with me, but go back home, back to Godhead. So that desire is good for us at this point.
So, one more point, Prabhuji, here. So, as you said that this is impersonal mukti. So, what are the types of mukti, and what should be our goal? Like, as you said, that our goal, even if we want to have a desire to go back to Godhead and serve Him, then how will we differentiate between these types of muktis that are there and the spiritual desire to serve Krishna in his abode?
Well, because there's no personal desire. That's how we differentiate. There's no desire for oneself. We are happy. We should be at least intellectually happy to go to hell for the Lord, if this is what Krishna wants us to do. But we are wanting to go back home, back to Godhead, because Krishna has told us that you come back to my abode. Krishna wants us to come back to his abode because this material world is actually a headache for him in some ways, right? But if Krishna wants us to preach and stay here, we're also there to do that. So our prayer to go back home, back to Godhead is essentially a prayer of service. And because Krishna has encouraged us to go back home, back to Godhead, because Prabhupada has encouraged us, the devotees have encouraged us, therefore we are praying. But the way we differentiate is that in any liberation, we only want service. And the material liberations are one in which the desire for service is not there. Right? There's no prayer for service. So in all these different Sarupya, Salokya, they're all serving Krishna in those abodes. But in the impersonal liberation, there's no service. And that's why that liberation is rejected.
Okay. So, but probably somewhere down the line, like there is a tinge of personal desire that we don't want to come to this world of misery again. So we don't want that suffering, right? That is the reason. If that is the motivation, then it becomes selfish bhakti, right? Not selfless bhakti.
So this is a very nice point. Again, you're bringing up some very key points, which is very good, because like we were reading, when were we reading? Here or somewhere else? I'm trying to remember. We were reading how, right here, Nectar Devotion class, right? Chapter 1, that how the characteristics of devotional service, 3 of them out of the 6 are related with happiness. So initially we start the process of devotional service because of a desire to become free from suffering. But as we progress in devotional service, then love for Krishna is synonymous with happiness. But it's not a selfish happiness. So how is that possible? Our focus, our wholehearted focus is the happiness of Krishna. And what does love mean? Love means that we make the happiness of Krishna our own happiness. So the desire for love is equal or includes happiness and the desire for happiness in some ways. So these two things are not contradictory. It's not that if a devotee wants to be happy, then they must have selfish desire. No. Why? Because there's no meaning of happiness without love, and there's no love without happiness. Krishna defines this in the Gita, susukham kartum avyayam, that the very characteristic of a devotee of the Lord is that they're always joyful. And Prabhupada says in one lecture, he says that in fact, if we're actually on the level of Uttamadhikari, we will always be happy. We will always be joyful because we're happy in Krishna's service. So yes, we want to be happy, but it's still not a selfish desire. Why? Because we want to be happy in Krishna's service. And that's why that happiness is not selfish. And the motivation is not just happiness, it's service to Krishna, it's love. Love is what makes us happy. So you say, well, no, but still, we go to Krishna because we want to be happy. Yes, initially we do. But you say, but still we're in Krishna consciousness because it's giving us happiness. Yes, that's true. But that is not in conflict or necessarily in conflict with love, because they're one and the same thing. They're actually one and the same thing. It is natural for the soul to love, and it's natural for the soul to be happy, and both of those things are found in Krishna. But that happiness is not for ourselves. You know, it becomes a selfless happiness. Just like if I want to serve my child, and that service is giving me happiness, I want to be happy by serving my child, then yes, it's a selfish happiness, but in one sense it's not, because I'm serving, right? It's part of my service.
Thank you so much, Prabhuji. This was going on in my head last 1 week, so thank you so much for relieving me. Hare Krishna.
Well, yes, this is a good question. I had this question myself as a Bhakti Shastri student, that, well, if I want, I'm a devotee because I want happiness, and if I want happiness, then it must be selfish. But no, that's what Rupa Goswami is actually explaining, that even selflessness is a state of happiness. So, in fact, that is only true happiness. Yes. Rashi Mataji?
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Thank you for good start of Saturday, as always. So, Prabhu, following on the same question which Mataji asked, so, right, we all have that desire to be happy and to be peaceful. So, as you said, this is not a personal desire, rather it's more of a spiritual desire. So, I mean, understanding intellectually that going towards material attractions and all those things is not good, but still you are compelled due to your sanskars and old habits and all that, right? And still you indulged in something like buying clothes and shopping and all that, right? But intellectually you do understand that it is not good, it's taking you away from Krishna. So what is the way out, as in continuously chanting and devotee association will solve this, or do you have to be keeping in mind always that no, you should not be doing this? I mean, this has been bothering me for a long time now, that whether chanting solves everything or you have to be extra cautious, or
Yes, it's a very nice question that you said. Many nice classes on this point from different senior devotees in our movement, and one of the themes that comes out is that nothing in devotional life or reaching Krishna is never a mechanical process. Like you said, chanting of the holy name of Krishna gives us everything. Yet even that, it has to be intentional, it has to be done conscientiously, it has to be done with the heart. And actually in Naperville community, we were just hearing a class on this, that we still have to be conscientious in our practice. So chanting does everything. It absolutely does everything. But what is the chanting that does everything? It is the conscientious chanting that does everything. There's a verse in Chaitanya Charitamrita, Bahu Janme Karyare Shavana Kirtana, Tabutane Paye Krishna Kore Premadhana. That when we go on chanting for millions of lifetimes, but still not attain love of Krishna, if one is not free from the offenses against the holy name of Krishna. And there, after that, then are the 10 offenses that are recited by the devotees. So, on one hand, Lord Chaitanya says that everything is done by chanting of the holy name of Krishna. Srila Prabhupada also says that. And on the other hand, in the same purport, Prabhupada will say that here's the process of Krishna consciousness. You have to do this and this and this and this. In one section in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Prabhupada says that one has to do 5 types of activities. Then one's chanting of the holy name will become very potent. Those 5 are like, serving the devotees, worshiping the deity, reading the scriptures, offering practical service. And it's so funny, in the same translation, Lord Chaitanya is saying, none of these are needed to attain the Lord. Only chanting of the holy name is needed. It's like a literal contradiction there. In the verse, Lord Chaitanya is saying nothing is needed, and in the purport, Prabhupada is saying, no, all these things are needed. So why does he say this? How is this? Because only chanting is needed. But what does chanting mean? Chanting doesn't mean that you can turn on a tape recorder and it can just keep chanting for you. But chanting, it means pure chanting, and pure chanting means this intentional process of devotional service, chanting in the mood of service. And in fact, this is very relevant to our Nectar devotion, because I think in chapter like 16 or something, Prabhupada actually says this very explicitly. He says that the effects of chanting are realized when we chant in the mood of service. And that's why eventually, after all the finagling and understanding and trial and error, what I've seen in my own life, and other devotees have also said the same, is that we always come back to Prabhupada's process, to Prabhupada's package. This is why what Prabhupada gave us, it is a package. There's some devotees, they experiment, well, let me chant 32 rounds every day and completely reduce this or increase that, but eventually we come back to Prabhupada's package. Because why? Because reading helps purify our mind, clarify our mind, which then encourages us to chant every day. If we stop reading, we forget to chant, because reading tells us the importance. And then if we're chanting, but we don't have the association of devotees, we lose our inspiration to chant. If we are chanting, but we don't offer our food, then our mind is so contaminated while we're chanting, we can't focus on Krishna at all. It's just like, it's like a, radio station is going here and there. So somewhere or the other, we fall, we slip. And knowing all this, being the most experienced devotee, Prabhupada has given us his process, which is the package of Krishna consciousness. The morning program, then in the day service. Prabhupada in Vrindavan, this is Vrindavan, right? This is like the place of sadhana, the place of bhajan. He told at that time, GBC, His Holiness Gopal Krishna Goswami Maharaj, he told him that every devotee living in the Vrindavan temple must do physical service 8 hours every day. This was his direct instruction for the devotees who are living in Vrindavan Dham. What to speak of us outside of Vrindavan Dham? But even Prabhupada was not allowing them to chant 64 rounds or just read or just hear all day. He wanted them to engage in practical service. So chanting is the only thing, but knowing that we cannot do it all the time. We're not on the level of Haridas Thakur. We've been given all these services so that, going back to the last chapter, we can follow Rupa Goswami's principle, and even chanting serves that principle, which is always remember Krishna and never forget him. So this is the month of the marathon. By distributing books, we are going to always remember Krishna and not forget him in this month. This is why Prabhupada asked us to do it, even though chanting is enough. But he knows we won't be able to always remember Krishna and never forget him unless we have these varieties of devotional services. So yes, maybe this answers your question, but did I skip a part of it, or did this answer it?
this helps, Prabhuji. But I have a follow-up question. So what if you are not inclined towards service, rather, I mean, you are more towards reading and chanting. So should you force yourself or let it come naturally?
Well, reading and chanting are services to Krishna. So we have to remember that. And so we have to see, how long can I read and chant every day? How long can I actually read and chant? Not what my mind wants to cheat me, but actually, how long can I read and chant? So maybe if we're very intellectually minded, we can read and chant maybe 3 hours a day, maybe even 4 hours a day. But then we have to ask ourselves, what am I doing the rest of the 20 hours? Are those Krishna conscious or not? So we may be inclined to reading and chanting, but we're still doing a job, right? We're going to work, some of us, maybe having a job. So if we're having a job, why should we not spiritualize the job? Why should the job be for us? So the effects of the job, we have to engage in the service of Krishna.
So yeah, I was hearing Prabhupada's class, and he's telling someone that while you are serving your family, you can put a consciousness in such a way that those are the souls given to you by Krishna, and that is your service towards Krishna. So I mean, if you keep that consciousness, Prabhu, that is enough, right? I mean, that can help for a time being, and then obviously you have to advance in your service.
Sorry. I just got distracted. Yes, and that's the great mistake that many devotees make, is that they think this is family time and this is Krishna time. This is for my home, this is my personal life, and this is my Krishna conscious life. So your point is absolutely correct. There's no Krishna time and family time. Everything must be for Krishna. So if we have a family, then our time that we spend with our children is very important, but that should be a service to Krishna. We should try to do Krishna conscious games, teach them Krishna conscious things, verses, read Krishna conscious books with them, or even sometimes children, they just need to rumble and tumble, like you have to play with them. But even that, you're doing it as a service to Krishna. I need to play with them because they need to play and kick a ball around. We're doing this so that then we can do evening arti. Their desires are a little satisfied, and then we can do evening arti. Or let me put a tape on, or some kirtan on, so that while we're doing these sort of somewhat mundane activities, at least we're hearing the holy name of Krishna. So we shouldn't think that this time is for Krishna, this time is for my family, because that means our family is different than Krishna. Everything has to be done for Krishna. At the same time, one of the advice that Sachidananda Maharaj gave to a devotee who was like you're describing, who was very, intellectually minded and, all these things, was that he said, always keep one service for yourself. Always continue doing one service that's a menial service. In addition to your service to your family and to, reading and chanting, a menial service that you're doing for the devotees or for a devotee. Because that reminds us of our position. Because in everything we're doing is for Krishna, right? But we may forget that it's for Krishna. But by doing that menial service, that hard work for Krishna, it will remind us that this is my position. Like some sannyasis will insist on washing their own clothes, even though there's so many disciples or devotees to do that, because it reminds them that I'm the servant. Some devotees will clean the temple bathroom. So there's also a virtue of humble service in Krishna consciousness, following the footsteps of Narad Muni. Right? He became Narad Muni because he served these great Mahatmas. He did menial services for them, brought them their plate, washed their plate, cleaned their rooms. Because those things especially bring us service. There's all these things are auspicious, But the Chaitanya Charitamrita says there's two substances that are most auspicious, that are kind of the bonus points. One substance is the dust from the feet of the devotee. The second substance is the remnants of the food from a devotee. So those items of devotional service still need to be there. Otherwise, we may go in a slippery slope that I'm doing this for Krishna, but we forget that it's for Krishna.
Thank you so much, Prabhu. It's really, really helpful, and sorry for taking so much time.
No, it's very nice questions. Thank you. Thank you so much. Anything else? Any final question? So my winter break is coming up. Next class, next Saturday is the commencement for our university, which starts at 8 in the morning. So I need to leave home at 7 in the morning. So next Saturday, we won't have class. I apologize. And then I have my Christmas break. So, I will post the chapter 3 homework. I'll even post chapter 4 because I won't be able to do class next Saturday. And then over the break, those of you who have taken the Gita exam, I'll be grading those. I was waiting for my Christmas break to come so I get some time. So thank you very much, everyone, for your very kind attention. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Dhanyavad.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna,
Dandavad
Prabhu.
Pranam.
Thank you so much.
Hare
much.
Krishna.
Hare
Thank
Krishna.
you. Dandavad Pranam, Prabhu.
Thank you,
Dhanyavad.
Prabhu.
Dandavad Pranam. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.